My name is Ethan Merrick. I'm 36 years old, a civil engineer from San Diego, California. For years, I believed I had built something solid. Not just structures, but a life, a marriage, a future. I was wrong about one of those things. I met Clara Donovan at a company mixer back in 2017. She was 24 then, sharp, confident, working in the administrative division at Merrick and Donovan Construction, the firm where my father, James Merrick, served as executive director. The Donovan in the company name was his business partner, no relation to Clara. She approached me first, asked intelligent questions about sustainable engineering, laughed at my terrible jokes. Within 6 months, we were engaged. Within a year, married in 2018. Everyone said we were perfect together. My father especially seemed proud. "You found yourself a woman with ambition," he'd say, clapping me on the shoulder. That's rare these days. What none of us realized, what I didn't see until it was far too late, was that Clara's ambition had very little to do with love and everything to do with strategy. Being married to the boss's son opened doors for her that talent alone never would have. Promotions came easier, invitations to executive meetings, respect from colleagues who might have otherwise dismissed her. She played her role perfectly, and I was too busy being happy to notice I was just a piece on her chessboard. The first 3 years were good, or at least they seemed that way. I worked on government projects, designing sustainable infrastructure for state contracts, while Clara climbed the ladder at the firm. We bought a house in North Park in 2019, a beautiful craftsman-style place with a front porch and a yard. The purchase price was $420,000. The deed went in her name for tax purposes, or so she said. I didn't question it. I trusted her. Then, in early 2022, everything changed. I started feeling exhausted all the time, joint pain that wouldn't quit, fevers that came and went without explanation. After months of tests, the diagnosis came back, a rare autoimmune condition. The doctors said it was manageable, but would require aggressive treatment, immunosuppressants, frequent hospital stays, possibly years of recovery. Clara stood beside me in that hospital room when they delivered the news. She held my hand. She said all the right things. "We'll get through this together," she promised. "I'm not going anywhere." If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. The treatments were brutal. I spent weeks at a time in and out of UC San Diego Medical Center, too weak to work, watching my savings drain into co-pays and medications. Clara visited at first, dutifully, like clockwork. But as the months dragged on, her visits became shorter, less frequent. She'd check her phone constantly, make excuses about work emergencies, leave before the nurses even finished their rounds. Around the same time, my father announced his retirement. He was 63, ready to step away from the business he'd built over 3 decades. The announcement came in late 2022, just as my health was declining. He'd earned it. But for Clara, it was a different kind of announcement. It was the end of her leverage. Without James Merrick in the executive office, Clara Merrick was just another mid-level administrator. The promotions stopped. The invitations dried up. And apparently, so did her interest in our marriage. By month 6 of my treatment, she'd stopped visiting altogether. I'd text her updates about my condition. She'd respond with single words. "Okay. Sorry. Busy." I told myself she was just stressed, that she'd come around once I got better. I was wrong about that, too. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in October 2023. A nurse brought them to my room along with my medication. Clara didn't even have the decency to deliver them herself. She'd had them couriered to the hospital. There was a note attached, brief and cold. "I can't do this anymore. I need to move forward with my life. Please sign these so we can both move on." I sat there in that sterile hospital bed staring at those papers, and something inside me finally understood. She hadn't married me. She'd married my father's influence. And now that I was sick and he was retired, I'd become worthless to her. I signed them. What else could I do? I was too exhausted to fight, too broken to care. Or so I thought. 2 weeks later, while still recovering, I got a call from my father. His voice was tight, controlled in that way that meant he was furious. "Ethan," he said, "did you know Clara sold your house?" I didn't. She hadn't mentioned it. Not once. Apparently, she'd closed the deal 3 days after I signed the divorce papers, pocketed nearly $470,000, and vanished. Just like that. The house had appreciated significantly since we'd bought it in 2019. "There's something else," my father continued. "Something she didn't know." He paused, and I could hear the grim satisfaction in his voice. "That land the house sits on, it's still in my name. I never transferred the deed, which means she just committed real estate fraud." For the first time in months, I smiled. The thing about being sick for months is that it gives you a lot of time to think. Time to see patterns you'd missed before. Time to understand exactly who people really are when there's nothing left for them to gain from you. I spent the next 2 weeks in that hospital bed doing exactly that. Thinking. Planning. My father visited every day, bringing documents, property records, the original deed to the land. We spread them across the adjustable table like we were preparing for war. In a way, we were. "She assumed I'd transferred the property to you when you got married," my father explained, tapping the yellow deed with his finger. "Most parents do. But I wanted to wait until you turned 40. Estate planning reasons, tax benefits. I told you about it years ago, but you probably forgot." I had forgotten. It had seemed so unimportant at the time, just paperwork and legal details that didn't matter in the day-to-day of being married. But now it mattered more than anything. "So legally," I said slowly, "Clara sold a house that was built on land she didn't own." "Exactly." My father's expression was grim, "which means the buyers don't have clear title. The sale is incomplete. And when they find out, and they will, they're going to come after her for fraud and misrepresentation. What do we need to do?" "Nothing yet," he said. "Let the situation develop naturally. The buyers will discover the issue when they try to refinance or sell. Their title company will flag it. Then the lawyers get involved, and Clara will have to answer for what she's done." I nodded slowly. My father had always been methodical, patient. He'd built his construction business on careful planning and attention to detail. Now he was teaching me that the same principles applied to justice. "In the meantime," he continued, "you focus on getting better. Let me handle the legal groundwork. We'll contact the buyers directly, inform them of the title defect before their lawyers do. It'll look better for us, show good faith, and it'll put Clara on the defensive immediately." It was a good plan, a quiet plan. The kind that didn't require me to scream or threaten or even confront her directly. The truth would do all the heavy lifting. I was discharged from the hospital in early November 2023. The doctors said my condition had stabilized enough for outpatient treatment. I moved into my father's place temporarily, a 3-bedroom ranch house in La Jolla with an ocean view. Clara had already cleared out anything valuable from our old house before the sale, leaving me with exactly 3 boxes of personal belongings and my truck. That first week of freedom felt strange. I was weak, 20 pounds lighter than I'd been before getting sick, but my mind was clearer than it had been in months. I started physical therapy 3 times a week, started eating properly again, started sleeping without the constant interruption of nurses checking vitals, and I waited. The call came on November 18th. My father's attorney, Richard Castellano, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s who specialized in real estate litigation. "Ethan," he said, his voice carrying that particular satisfaction lawyers get when they know they have an airtight case, "we've made contact with the buyers. They were very surprised to learn about the title issue. I bet they were. They've already retained counsel, and they're not happy. Clara misrepresented the property entirely. She claimed to have full ownership and clear title. She signed documents stating as much. That's textbook fraud. What happens now? Now they sue her, and we cooperate fully with their attorneys, provide all the documentation they need to prove the land ownership. Clara will have 2 choices: settle for the full purchase price plus damages and legal fees, or go to trial and lose everything. How much are we talking about? Purchase price was $470,000. Add legal fees, damages, and court costs, she's looking at close to $650,000 in liability. Maybe more, depending on how aggressive their lawyers get. I let out a long breath. $650,000. Clara had maybe $40,000 in savings, if that. Her salary at the firm was around $75,000 a year. She'd be financially destroyed. There's something else, Richard continued. I did some digging into Clara's employment situation. Turns out she's been having an affair with a project manager at the firm. Guy named Derek Sutton, 38, divorced, been with the company for 6 years. Word around the office is they've been together since before you got sick. That should have hurt more than it did. But by that point, I'd already mourned the marriage. The betrayal was just confirmation of what I already knew. Clara had never really been mine. She'd been waiting for the right moment to trade up. Does anyone at the firm know about the lawsuit yet? I asked. Not officially, but these things have a way of getting around. Real estate disputes are public record once they're filed. I'd give it a couple weeks before someone at Merrick and Donovan puts 2 and 2 together. Keep me updated, I said. And Richard, thank you. My pleasure, Ethan. Your father's a good man, and from what I can tell, so are you. People like Clara need to learn that actions have consequences. I hung up and sat there on my father's back deck, watching the Pacific Ocean roll in under a gray November sky. The air was cold, but I barely felt it. For the first time since getting sick, I felt something close to peace. Clara had made her choices. She'd married me for access, abandoned me when I became inconvenient, and stolen what she thought was community property on her way out. Now the universe was going to teach her a very expensive lesson about greed and karma. I didn't need to do anything. I just needed to watch. The lawsuit was filed on December 2nd, 2023. Mason and Patricia Glenwood vs. Clara Merrick. The Glenwoods were the buyers, a couple in their early 50s who'd been planning to retire in that house. They'd paid cash, $470,000, believing they were getting clear title to property and land. Instead, they got a legal nightmare. Their attorney was a woman named Judith Harlow, known in San Diego for being absolutely ruthless in real estate litigation. She filed a complaint that was 37 pages long and cited every possible statute Clara had violated: fraud, misrepresentation, breach of contract, unjust enrichment, the legal equivalent of throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. Except in this case, all of it stuck. Clara tried to fight it at first. She hired a lawyer, some guy fresh out of law school who charged around $200 an hour. He clearly wasn't worth. They filed a response claiming the title issue was a minor technicality that could be easily resolved. Judith Harlow tore that argument apart in her reply brief. She pointed out that land ownership isn't a technicality. It's the foundation of all real property law. Without ownership of the land, there is no property. Clara had sold something she didn't have the right to sell. End of story. The judge agreed. In January 2024, he issued a preliminary ruling that was devastating for Clara. The sale was void. The Glenwoods were entitled to a full refund. Clara was responsible for all costs and fees. And if she didn't have the money to pay, and she didn't, her assets would be seized and liquidated. That's when Clara finally understood what she'd done to herself. I heard about it through my father, who heard it from someone still working at the firm. Apparently, Clara had shown up to work one morning in tears, barely able to function. The rumors about the lawsuit had finally reached the office, and people were talking, whispering, judging. By February, everyone knew. The administrative assistant who'd married the boss's son for personal gain, the woman who'd abandoned her sick husband, and then committed fraud on her way out the door. The story spread through the construction industry like wildfire. San Diego's a big city, but the professional world is surprisingly small. Clara's reputation was destroyed, and with it, her career. The settlement conference happened on March 14, 2024, at the Superior Court of California in downtown San Diego. I wasn't required to attend, but Richard Castellano suggested I should. Sometimes, he said, It helps for the other party to see exactly who they've wronged. Puts a human face on their mistakes. So I went. My father came with me. We sat in the hallway outside the conference room, waiting while the lawyers hammered out the details inside. Clara arrived 20 minutes late, looking like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her suit wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes. She saw me sitting there and froze. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she walked over slowly, like she was approaching something dangerous. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I didn't know you'd be here." Richard thought it was a good idea. She looked at my father, then back at me. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. The house, I assumed. You assumed the land was mine," I said. "You assumed you could take everything and walk away clean. You assumed wrong." Her face crumpled. "It's not like that. It's exactly like that, Clara. You married me because I was useful. You left me because I stopped being useful. And you stole from me because you thought you could get away with it. The only thing you didn't count on was the truth catching up with you." Before she could respond, her lawyer stuck his head out of the conference room. "Clara, we need you inside. Now." She looked at me one more time, something desperate in her eyes, then turned and followed him in. The door closed with a heavy click. My father put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay." The conference lasted 3 hours. When it finally ended, Richard emerged looking satisfied. "It's done," he said. "She's settling. Full restitution to the Glenwoods, $470,000. Legal fees and court costs, another $105,000. She has 60 days to pay or they'll start seizing assets. Does she have that kind of money? Not even close. She'll have to liquidate everything. Her car, her retirement accounts, probably take out loans she'll be paying off for the next decade. But it's better than going to trial and losing even more." I nodded slowly. $575,000. Clara had destroyed her entire financial future in one spectacularly stupid decision. And the worst part? She'd done it to herself. I hadn't lifted a finger. "There's one more thing," Richard added. "The Glenwoods attorney is filing a formal complaint with the California Department of Real Estate. Clara's conduct violated multiple statutes. Even if she's not criminally charged, and she might be, she'll never work in real estate or any property-adjacent field again. Her name is Mud." We left the courthouse together, walking out into the bright March sunshine. I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because I'd hurt Clara. I hadn't, not really. But because justice had actually worked the way it was supposed to. The system had held her accountable. The truth had won. Over the next 2 months, I watched Clara's life dismantle piece by piece. I didn't go looking for information. I didn't have to. San Diego's professional community is tight-knit and news travels fast. First, she lost her job. Merrick and Donovan Construction quietly let her go in late March, citing conduct unbecoming of company values. No severance package, no references, just a clean termination and an NDA to keep her from talking about it publicly. The firm couldn't afford to be associated with someone who'd committed real estate fraud, even if it had nothing to do with their projects. Then Derek Sutton ended their relationship, apparently dating a woman embroiled in a massive lawsuit and financial scandal wasn't the upgrade he'd been hoping for. He transferred to the firm's Riverside office and blocked her number. So much for true love. By April, Clara had sold her 2021 Honda Accord, emptied her 401k, which held about $38,000, and taken out a personal loan at 19% interest just to make the first payment to the Glenwoods. She moved out of the luxury apartment she'd been renting in Little Italy, where she'd been paying $2,800 a month, and into a tiny studio in La Mesa for $1,100 a month, the kind of place with thin walls and coin-operated laundry in the basement. I know all this because my father still had friends at the firm who kept him updated. Not because he asked, they volunteered the information, shocked by how far she'd fallen. "She used to be so put together," one of them told him. "Now she looks like she's aged 10 years in 3 months. I felt no satisfaction hearing it, just a quiet acknowledgement that consequences exist, even for people who think they're above them. As for me, I was healing, slowly but steadily. My condition stabilized with the right medication regimen. I'd regained most of the weight I'd lost, and the fatigue that had plagued me for so long finally lifted. By May, I was strong enough to start thinking about my future, not in terms of what I'd lost, but what I wanted to build. I didn't want to go back to civil engineering. The work had been meaningful, but it reminded me too much of the person I'd been, the guy who'd ignored red flags because he wanted so badly to believe in his marriage. I needed something different, something tangible, something I could create with my own hands. I'd always been good with woodworking. My grandfather had taught me when I was a kid, and I'd kept it as a hobby over the years. Building furniture, fixing things, the smell of sawdust and the satisfaction of seeing raw lumber turn into something beautiful. It was therapy in a way that nothing else had been. So I made a decision. I took the money from the settlement. My father had given me half of what we'd recovered from the land dispute, about $85,000. Since he still owned the land, he'd received compensation when the title issue was resolved, and he insisted I take half to restart my life. I bought a small commercial space in Oceanside, a beach town 35 miles north of San Diego. It was an old auto repair shop, 1,200 square feet with high ceilings and good natural light. The purchase price was $115,000, perfect for a woodworking studio. I spent June and July renovating the space. Installed new electrical, built workbenches, bought quality tools. A table saw, a planer, sanders, clamps, everything I needed to do the work properly. My father helped when he could, and we worked in comfortable silence, the way men do when they understand each other without needing to talk. By August 2024, I opened Merrick Woodworks. No grand ceremony, no advertising, just a simple sign outside and a website showing some of the pieces I'd made. Tables, bookshelves, custom cabinetry. I posted on local Facebook groups and Nextdoor, joined some neighborhood communities, and waited to see if anyone would actually hire me. The first client was a retired teacher named Margaret who wanted a built-in bookshelf for her home library. She paid me $1,200, told all her friends, and suddenly I had more work than I could handle. By September, I was booked 3 months out. The work was good, honest. I'd meet with clients, discuss what they wanted, design something that fit their space and their budget, then build it with my own hands. Every mortise and tenon joint, every sanded edge, every coat of finish, it was all mine. And when I delivered a piece and saw the look on someone's face when they realized it was exactly what they'd imagined, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride, purpose, peace. I didn't think about Clara much anymore. Occasionally, I'd hear something through the grapevine. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office, making $17 an hour. She'd tried to reach out to mutual friends, but most had stopped responding. Her parents, who'd always been distant, had apparently told her they were disappointed and offered no financial help. She'd burned every bridge, and now she was living with the consequences. That was enough for me. In October 2024, almost exactly a year after she'd served me divorce papers in that hospital room, I got a text from an unknown number. I knew immediately it was her. Who else would it be? The message was long, rambling, full of apologies and regret. She said she'd made terrible mistakes, that she'd been selfish and cruel, that she understood if I could never forgive her, but she wanted me to know she was sorry. She said she'd lost everything, her job, her friends, her reputation, and that she finally understood what she'd done to me. I read it twice, then deleted it without responding. Not out of anger, but because there was nothing left to say. Clara had taught me an important lesson. Some people only value you for what you can give them, and when you stop being useful, they'll discard you without a second thought. But here's the thing about people like that. They eventually run out of people to use. And when they do, they end up exactly where Clara ended up, alone, broke, and wondering how it all went so wrong. By the spring of 2025, Merrick Woodworks had become more than just a business. It had become my identity. I'd hired an apprentice, a 22-year-old kid named Tyler, who was studying furniture design at San Diego Mesa College and needed real-world experience. He was eager, talented, and reminded me of myself at that age, back when I still believed hard work and integrity were all you needed to succeed. I still believe that, actually. But now I also understand that you need to be careful who you trust with those values. The shop was located 3 blocks from the ocean in Oceanside, close enough that I could smell salt air through the open bay doors when I worked. I'd bought a small house nearby in late 2024, a 2-bedroom bungalow built in the 1940s with original hardwood floors and a backyard full of succulents. The purchase price was $380,000, and I'd put down 20%. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Completely, legally, undeniably mine. I'd wake up at 6, make coffee, walk down to the beach to watch the sunrise, then head to the shop by 7:30. The rhythm of the work was meditative, measuring, cutting, sanding, assembling. Every project was a puzzle that needed solving, and I was good at solving puzzles. Always had been. Business was steady. I specialized in custom furniture and built-ins, working mostly with homeowners who wanted something unique, something that fit their space perfectly. I wasn't cheap. Quality craftsmanship never is. But people appreciated the attention to detail. They appreciated that I showed up on time, did exactly what I said I'd do, and stood behind my work. Word of mouth kept me busy. I'd finished projects for a pediatrician in Carlsbad, a software engineer in Encinitas, even a minor league baseball player who wanted a custom entertainment center for his man cave. Each client led to another. Each satisfied customer became a walking advertisement. I was making about $70,000 a year, slightly less than I'd made as a civil engineer. But I didn't care. I wasn't working to impress anyone anymore. I was working because I loved the work itself. That made all the difference. My father visited the shop regularly, usually on Sunday afternoons when it was quiet. We'd sit on the workbenches with cold beers talking about projects, about life, about how much better everything felt now that the chaos had settled. He'd officially stepped away from Merrick and Donovan in early 2023, right after his retirement announcement, and the company had been sold to a commercial development firm later that year. The Merrick name was gone from the business, but my father didn't seem to mind. 30 years was enough, he told me one afternoon. I built something solid, made a good living, and got out at the right time. Now I get to watch you build something of your own. That's better than any legacy I could have left at that firm. You think I made the right choice? I asked, walking away from engineering. He considered that for a moment. I think you made the honest choice. You could have gone back to government contracts, to that whole world of bureaucracy and politics. But you didn't want that life anymore. You wanted something real, something you could see and touch and be proud of. He gestured around the shop. This is real, Ethan. This matters. He was right. It did matter, more than I'd realized it would. One afternoon in June 2025, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer. I'd learned to be wary of unknown callers, but something made me pick up. Ethan Merrick? The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. Speaking. My name is Robert Glenwood. I'm the husband of Patricia Glenwood, the couple who bought your house from your ex-wife. I sat up straighter. Mr. Glenwood, how can I help you? I wanted to thank you, he said, and apologize. That caught me off guard. Apologize for what? For the position we put you in. When we filed that lawsuit, we knew Clara was your ex-wife. We knew you'd been sick when all this happened. But we were angry and we felt cheated, and honestly, we didn't think much about how it might affect you. You don't need to apologize, I said. You were the victims of fraud. You had every right to sue. Maybe. But after it was all over, Patricia and I did some research. We learned what Clara had done to you, leaving you while you were in the hospital, taking everything. We realized you'd been hurt by her too, probably worse than we were. And we wanted you to know we're sorry you had to go through all that. I didn't know what to say. I'd expected anger from the Glenwoods, or at best indifference, not empathy. We eventually sold the property, Robert continued. Took a loss, but we couldn't stay there after everything that happened. Too much bad energy, you know. But we've moved on. We're in a better place now. and I hope you are too. I am, I said quietly. I really am. Good, that's good. Anyway, we saw your website, Merrick Woodworks. Beautiful stuff. If we ever need custom furniture, we'll know who to call. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. The Glenwoods had lost money, time, and peace of mind because of Clara's greed. But they'd found a way to move past it, to rebuild, to be decent people even when they had every reason not to be. It reminded me that the world wasn't full of Claras. Most people were good. Most people played by the rules and treated each other fairly. Clara was the exception, not the rule, and she destroyed herself because of it. I heard one last thing about Clara in August 2025, almost 2 years after she'd walked into that hospital room with divorce papers. A mutual acquaintance mentioned she'd moved to Arizona, Phoenix, maybe Tucson, to start over somewhere people didn't know her story. She was working retail, living paycheck to paycheck, still paying off the debts from the settlement. Part of me felt bad for her, a small part. She'd built her entire life on shortcuts and manipulation, and when it all came crashing down, she had nothing left to stand on. No real skills, no genuine relationships, no foundation, just regret and consequences. But mostly, I felt nothing. She was a chapter in my life that had closed, and I had no interest in reopening it. As for me, I kept building. I kept creating. I kept showing up every day to do work that mattered, for people who appreciated it, in a town where I could hear the ocean and smell the salt air, and feel like I'd finally found where I belonged. I learned something important through all of this. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be cruel. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well, building something honest, becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to cheat or lie or use people to get ahead. Clara took a lot from me, my health, my marriage, my trust in people. But she couldn't take my character. She couldn't take my ability to start over. And in the end, that's what separated us. She destroyed everything she touched, including herself. I built something new from the ashes and made it better than what came before. That's not revenge. That's justice. My name is Ethan Merrick. I'm 36 years old, and I'm a woodworker in Oceanside, California. I wake up every morning in a house I own, walk to a business I built, and create things that will outlast me. I have my health back, my father's respect, and peace of mind that no amount of money could buy. Clara has none of those things, and she has only herself to blame. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment letting me know what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.